So, hey Marius, thanks for having me on this Fair to the Horse online. We're going to have a chat about the collection and how we can use the schoolhalt and the schoolcanter to improve the collection and in which order we start. So the first thing I did with Ikaros was to just check him in liberty feeling. The main reason to why I do liberty work in the beginning is that I know that I'm gonna need a hand when I do my normal work, and the hand will be very important later on in the collection work. But I don't want to be depending on my hand. So I don't have to do it in liberty, but the liberty work can be a good way of checking, okay, does your horse at least can do start and stop, it can turn left and right, it can back up, without me pushing or pulling or doing too much other stuff with my hand. So I want to be able to use my hand in a very good way, but I don't want to from day one start to be depending on my hand. So that's also one of the reasons to why I do some liberty work, and also my wife is good at liberty work, so I have good help from there. So the main thing I focusing on when I start this work is that the horse can bend around the inside leg, aid, also the whip, the whip as an inside leg aid. And the main thing for me is to feel that the horse always search me. So what I'm focusing on when I start this work is not so much about the hind quarter. It has more to do something that he can follow me with his shoulder. So the main thing I'm looking at right now is that if I show the whip here and I can turn in this direction, I want his outside front leg to always search me. That's a bending around leg. So what I did for many years was that I was trying to activate the hind legs very early, and then I used the whip on the inside leg position, and I tried to get the inside hind leg to step forward. But the problem was often that I used my hand way too much. So I got the inside hind leg under, but I got the outside shoulder to point out. So I got the outside front leg to step very much more outwards, rather than that he could lift his shoulder and search me. So when the horse is okay in just following, then of course we can start, and then we can start using a cavesson, or like now I have a curb on, and then we can start making more influence over the hand. But then at least I know I don't depend on my hand. So we're going to continue to show a little bit more work with the collection and how we can approach the schoolhalt, for example, and what we are focusing on when we are starting the schoolhalt, because this is the work that many academic riders do. And we see some good work, and we see that, especially if we have beginners, that they struggle a lot of finding what they are supposed to really focusing on to get the complete schoolhalt, where the horse actually can bend and come more down on the haunches. So we're going to try to explain a little bit our approach in how we can work this, and how we can, so that we can help you guys to find an easy way, or at least easier way, to come to the schoolhalt and higher collection. So we're going to start there. It depends how you see on it, because we have this standing still work that we can give a little bit stelling, we can move the shoulder a little bit, we can shift the weight a little bit more to the hind quarter. That's a good way in explaining for the horse, and especially the rider, I would say, to see balance in the horse, see where if the horse is leaning too much on his inside shoulder or leaning towards the outside shoulder, is he hanging too deep down? So this gives a certain idea of where the horse has his balance in his body. When it comes to the point where I want to teach more collection, where the horse actually is supposed to go deeper and more on the haunches, then I do it from motion, because for me at least, I do a very clear difference between a stop and a halt. And we want school halt, and school halt for me is something that you ride into. So I want motion into it. Otherwise it's a rather school standing still, and that's a good start. But then when we come to the point where we need him to go lower, he needs to have the feeling that we can get the weight more backwards and we can get the hind legs more forward. So we need the horse to step into that. So I'm going to start to explain a little bit how I approach it and find balance, so I know that he's equally good in shifting the weight and he's equally good in stepping forward. So I'm going to show you and explain a couple of steps what are important for me, and this is important before I even start thinking about putting the horse on the haunches. I need these 3 steps that we're going to talk about before I even try to get the horse lower more on the haunches. So I will try to show you these steps. Yeah, I would say that the biggest beneficial is not for the horse, for maybe in this complete standing still work, but for the student, because we can learn to see where he's putting his balance, if he's leaning too much on one shoulder, if he's leaning too much on that shoulder, if he's putting the weight more on this shoulder. We learn to see balance in this work. And that of course, it helps the horse to follow the hand and be very supple and learning to listen to small aids. So of course it's beneficial for the horse also, but I think for most of the times, it's the most beneficial is for the student to really see what's happening in the horse and feeling if you have resistance in the horse or whatever. So definitely more for the student than for the horse, absolutely. So when I start to approach the school halt, there are a couple of things that I need to find. I need to find a good balance between how he takes my hand and how he takes the driving aid from behind. When we do the standing still work, what most students are working with, and this can also be a little bit problematic when it comes to the point where he should be more on the haunches, is that most of the times we can do this stelling and we shift the weight. So we are teaching the horse very good in understanding the hand, but that's one part of the school halt. So shifting the weight is one part and taking the hind quarter forward, and the hind legs forward is another part. And we need this balance very good. And on many horses, we see that this part is better than that part. And then we need to find a way that we can build up the balance between how well the horse understands stepping forward with his hind legs and how well the horse can shift the weight backwards. So there are a couple of steps where I can check my horses, how well he responds to my hand and how well he responds to the whip, or later on, for example, my legs. So what we're going to start with is I'm going to show you the first step that I do with a young horse. Of course, I do the standing still work and all this, but when it comes to the point where I want to check the balance, I start with working hand whip. And I'm going to show you what I mean with this. So for Ikaros, he needs to understand, or all horses needs to understand the difference between backing up, for example, or school halt. So what I try to teach my horses is that if I'm coming here to the wall and I give a little bit with my hand and I don't push anything from behind, he just carefully backing up. So he's following my body language and he's following my hand. So we try it again. This was hand, but we wanted hand whip. So we try to say, pony, can you back up? And then when I do backing up, okay, I have no pony that cannot do the school halt. So if he's offering the school halt, it is what it is. But for me, it's important that I just know that we can go forward, we can stop, he can back up. So he's just following. And if I come with a whip more to the hind quarter, that's hand whip. Next thing, so when the horse is comfortable with this, he knows that he follows backwards. And when I come with the whip more towards the hind quarter, he knows that the whip means don't, because I push more from behind, so he should think, oh, okay, not more backwards. So that's I'm working with hand whip. The next thing is whip hand, and I'm gonna show you how I approach this. So we wanted to have this feeling that we could start, we could stop, we could back up, He's just following. We could come with a whip, and when I come with a whip towards the hindquarter, he's immediately stopped backing up. The next thing is that I want him to start to understand that when I come with a whip on the hindquarter, I need him to start to understand that he should step forward. So most of the times when I teach a young horse this, I teach him to stand like that, so that I can very easily say, yes, okay, he knows it. So I know that it's easy for him to understand that if he stops with the inside hind leg a little bit behind him, it's easy for him to start to understand that he should step up. That's very nice, but not right now. So I know that I can go, that he starts to understand the whip and he should step forward. And if I start to get that feeling, I can go see if I can get this feeling a little bit in forward. So then I go, come, 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 come. And then I must be able to give the hand. Oops. So I know that if I go hand backwards and I come with a whip, he must have a good balance with this. And if I go whip, come, come, come with the hindquarter, I need to understand, he needs to understand that he should immediately listen to the hand. So, and you're gonna feel that your pony is gonna have some things that they are better on. Some horses are maybe a little bit better on activating from the hind. They are a little bit quicker, they have more power, more energy, and then they're gonna be a little bit more better on taking be more active with the legs. The biggest risk that we have with that is that the horse will push itself. They have a more tendency to push themselves into the hand. So then it's maybe the whip and the leg aids are here and the hand aids are in this level, and then we need to level this out. And like for Ikaros, for example, he's very good in the hand. He's always listened to the half halt, he's very soft, he's never pushy, but he's a little bit slower horse, so his aid are with the hand or maybe here, and my whip aid on him to get him active a little bit more here. So I need to find balance between this. So I work hand backing up, coming with a whip and stopping backing up. We see if we can go forward and see if we can get him to activate the hind legs a little bit. And when he goes a little bit more active and starts to get the picture that he should activate the hind legs, I come with a hand and see if he immediately can stop. So hand whip, whip hand. And the final picture that I teach my young horses before I even start thinking a complete school halt picture, it's stepping out of the hand. And I will try to explain what I mean by stepping out of the hand. The final picture I want a little bit from my horses, before I start to get the feeling that I can put him more on the haunches, is that I can get him to step out of the hand. This is, for most, and for me also, it's the trickiest part of it. So stepping out of the hand, it's another approach that we have than with a young horse, for example, because a young horse will learn to step towards the hand. We give the rein a little bit, in lunging or riding or whatever, we give the hand a little bit, we give longer reins, we see if we can ask the hind legs to step forward deeper in under the horse and see if the horse stretches towards the giving hand. With the older horse, we want to learn that he can, when I activate the hind legs, that he can step and be lighter in the front. Easiest way to explain this is that if you would imagine yourself that your ponies would stand in the pilers that we don't use it very much in the academic, but we have pilers. And it's just to get the picture in your head what I try to explain. So if we have pilers and we're working the horse in the pilers, we want the horse to stand between the pilers. We don't want the horse to lean into the rope and be super heavy. That's not the thing that we are going for. We want the horse to stand in between the pilers. But if the horse have a tendency to go into the ropes, we have two options in how we can get the horse away from the ropes and out of the ropes. One, we know that we can back the horse. So we can say, pony, back up, step out of the ropes, back out of the ropes. Number two is that we can activate the hind legs. So if he's heavy on the ropes, we can say, and boop, boop, step in, and he releases in the ropes. That's stepping out of the hand. That's what we try to want to explain for Ikaros, and now he's already know it a little bit, but the feeling, how I approach this work when I teach the horse to step out of the hand. So what we're gonna do here is that I'm gonna see that, oh, sorry Ikaros, I'm gonna see that I can just give tiny, tiny, tiny pressure, and this I mean very light, because if I do a little bit more, he will back up. So when I know I can give a little bit, tiny, tiny pressures, light enough so that he doesn't back up, I want at the same time see if he can start thinking forward with the hind legs, more, yes, so that he steps into the halt and becomes lighter in the front. Now he's doing it more than most horses will do in the beginning. So I show it again. So I give very slight pressure, see if I can activate the hind legs a little bit. So, and there he's light, so there I don't have to use my hand anymore. Of course, this is much more than a young horse will do, but you got the picture at least. So I try to give a slight pressure, and then I keep that pressure very, very, very soft, and see if he can just thinking a little bit forward with the hind leg, so he steps in and he goes lighter into the shoulder. So we can just show backing up. This is hand whip, and we have whip and hand, so that he immediately listen to my hand, doesn't have to do school halt, and hand, good, good, and also that we can stop, and he can step out of the hand a little bit, so he releases in the front, and then he got lighter on the hand. So these are the steps that I try to work on. And this I can do with the young horse, and he, of course, oh, you were fantastic, of course. Sorry, my friend. These are the steps that I can work on also from a very early age with the horse. I can learn him to just backing up and stopping from the whip and going forward a little bit, activate that he understands that, okay, at least he thinks forward with the hind legs. And that then when he's okay with that, whip hand whip, he can step out a little bit of the hand. Then I try to see if I can get the feeling that I can shift the weight a little bit backwards, and I can at the same time ask the hind legs to step a little bit forward, and in that way try to get the horse to come a little bit more on the haunches. When the horse can do these steps, when he can do hand whip, whip hand, stepping out of the hand, then we come to the point where we want to get the horse to understand that he should get more down on the knee and the haunches, that he can bend more. And the main thing that my approach is that I want that the horse thinks into the school halt. I don't want too much of leaning backwards, because that gives me a backward thinking mind, and that's going to be very problematic for me if I want to use, for example, the school halt to improve the school canter that we're also going to speak about, the school canter and how we can get the horse to lift the chest. Then it's going to be very problematic that the horse just think backwards. So we want the feeling that he thinks into the school halt, and we want the chest up. So when I do school halt with my horses, I don't look super much here, I look what's happening here. So I want that he steps in, and I want that this part comes up. It's very easy if we lean backwards with a horse that he will get more straight. Maybe he will lift the front leg, for example, but this part will get down. He will get low, just down with it, and then he's dropping the chest too much. So the part that I'm looking with my horses is where I'm gonna sit and just behind the wither, so that this part comes up. So if we go into the school halt, we want forward activity, and then we want to see that that part comes up, and then he can release again, so that I see that it's lifting. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, fantastic. Good. We'll try it one more time here to the left. So I want a little bit activity into it. And I see that that part comes a little bit up. And also here that if I know that I have good balance with the driving aid and the hand, and I have nice balance in this work, then I also feel that the horse can take information even in the school halt. So I can try to show you a little bit what I'm focusing on, but when I see that the horse can go into the school halt, then we see if I can say put into the halt and say tiny school halt. And then see if we can say more school halt, less school halt, more school halt, less school halt, oi, and more school halt. Oops, and there we got Levad instead, but that was nice. So that I know that he's following me. It's not just the trick that he goes, and then he just keeps it by himself. He follows the hand, he understands the whip. So when we are working towards the school halt, it's the school halt is not an exercise, it's a tool. And it's a tool to learn the horse. How should he use his body? How can he bend? How can he use the hind legs in a way that it's easier, at least for us to explain in the school halt. But it's not an exercise, it's a tool. So we want to work with the school halt and use that tool to improve the later on collection. For example, with the school halt that we're going to speak more. But we also see here with Ikaros that I can go more school halt, less school halt. If I gave a little bit more, he comes into the levad. So I just shape him and he's following. So he takes information even though he's in the school halt. So it's not just that he do the trick and I cannot influence over it. He's still listening to my aids. That's the main thing that we want him to do. Yeah.
Christofer, do you use the school halt to improve the canter, or do you use the canter to improve the school halt?
I would say both, because the school halt I can in a very easy way explaining the shape, for example. But also with the canter, for example, that gives me a little bit more activity. So I would say that both way around. But for example, if we speak about collection in general, I often use the next thing in mind for the horse. So if I do a school halt, I don't want to have the feeling that the horse thinks backwards and he cannot do a transition. I want to have a horse that he's ready for something. So for example, if I do piaffe, let's say I do a piaffe with a horse, I want to have the feeling that the horse thinks about the canter so that he's prepared for next thing. So I would often say that I use canter more to improve the piaffe. So if I'm in the piaffe, for example, and the horse gets a little bit stuck on the shoulder, I can do a couple of canter jumps so that the horse comes up with the shoulder again and gets a little bit more activity. And then I can come back to the piaffe and the horse have a little bit more thinking about the canter. So he thinks next step. So it's not, in general, I don't want a backward thinking mind. I always want a forward thinking mind in my horses. And that also means that I need to, if I do a school halt, I need him to be prepared for canter, for example, or a piaffe or whatever. And if I do a piaffe, I need him to be prepared to go forward or up to canter or whatever. So I would say that it's both ways. I would say that I use the canter to improve the school halt and the piaffe, and I use the school halt to improve the piaffe and then the canter. It's a both way direction, definitely. But it's very important that I have a forward-thinking mind and that I can do a transition, so that the feeling is not that I get stuck in collection. I don't want the backward-thinking mind, because then the feeling is I cannot very easily go forward out of it again. So I want to be able to come out of collection easy. Okay, so we're going to speak a little bit about the school canter and also a little bit our approach. So, for example, me and Marius try to meet each other at least one time a year. We sometimes more, but at least one time a year, and we try to work together. And we have a topic and we work with it. And both of us have quite small, long, short-legged ponies. And we have struggled a lot to keep that little bit longer horse a little bit compressed and a little bit more collected. So we have different approaches, for example, to the canter work. So Aramis, for example, is extremely good with a tarater. And that made him round. So Marius struggled a little bit with the school canter in the beginning, but he did very nice tarater, Aramis. And Ikaros had a better school canter, and I'd have to work a little bit more to get the tarater. So I will try to explain what I'm focusing on when I start working with the school canter and what's important. So we have different types of canter. We have a 3-beated canter, that's a forward-going canter. And what I'm focusing on there, or at least me focusing on, is that I want a forward-going canter that the diagonal swings well through, so that the horse goes well round over his back, and you can have a nice clean 3-beated, that is becoming bum, ba-da bum, ba-da bum, ba-da bum. It's just relaxed and forward-going. Then we want to come to the more collection, coming close to the school canter, a canter that I can turn in very easily. I can do a canter pirouette, for that the school canter is necessary. The hard part with both the forward-going canter and the school canter is that I need to focus on different parts. So for a forward-going canter, I need to focus on the inside hind leg swinging through. But if I do too much of a shoulder in, for example, feeling, then I will lose the outside hind leg. So then I will get the horse round, but he will get too heavy on the shoulder. If I do, then I come towards more collection. And if I overdo the haunches in, I will get the outside hind leg under the horse, but I get the inside hind leg to step too much sideways rather than forward. And then the horse will try to lift the chest, but he will lose the roundness. So the hard part with collection and forward, it's not to get the horse round or lifted. It's hard to get the horse to be round and lift the chest at the same time. So often what's happening in the beginning when we're working the collection is that he tries to lift the chest, but he's losing too much of the roundness over his back. So what I'm focusing on in the school canter is, with Ikaros, a very calm rhythm. I want a slow rhythm into the canter work. And I want to catch the outside hind leg, but I also want to catch his inside hind leg. So I get both hind legs to step forward, because he needs to lift his chest on both hind legs. So I will show you a little bit what I start with working on before I even start thinking about the canter work. So when I'm working Ikaros here, the main thing for me is that I know that if I go here, and I, for example, come up with a whip, he's immediately coming with his outside shoulder to me. So I can go here, and I can say, Ikaros, come, and he's turning his shoulder to me. So I almost want to have the feeling that he wants to crash me, that he wants to come very close. Because I need that outside shoulder, very good control, because when he's jumping up, I want the outside hind leg to come in, but I want the inside hind leg to also come forward and take weight. So in that way, I need to place the shoulder in a way so that both hind legs can carry the weight. So I often just start walking with my horses a little bit, and feeling that if I turn, he's turning. If I go forward, he goes forward. I turn again, he coming to me. If I catch his outside with my whip, he coming closer, and I can turn the shoulder, and the shoulder comes to me again. So I always know that he is very comfortable in coming to me, so that he's very comfortable in coming to me. So that I want when the horse jumps. I want that the horse starts to pick up the canter from his outside hind leg, and I want the inside hind leg to start swinging through. So I will show you a couple of jumps in the school canter and see how he's doing today. Come. So my main focus is that he jumps forward with both hind legs and that I see that his inside hind leg steps under. And if I lose the inside hind leg in the school canter, the hard part is that if I just go, sorry, I will turn my horse around. If I would just go and take my whip, because I will stand like this, thank you, good. If I would just take my whip in the low position and use the whip on the inside leg position, the biggest risk is that I push the hind quarter out. Then I will lose the outside hind leg and then he will have a hard time lifting the canter. But what I can do to catch his inside hind leg in a better way is that I can take with my outside rein, I can turn the shoulder a tiny bit in so that he goes more up and he plays his shoulder. Because if I don't turn the shoulder, that's also why the reason I check it from in walk, that I can go and just go and come with me. So I know that I can always place the shoulder. Because if he's doing haunches in and he's turning the shoulder too much out, the hind quarter will do that and he will get behind with the shoulder. And then I will lose this hind leg. So when the horse is doing that, I get there and then I turn the shoulder here, so I get that feeling that both hind legs steps forward, because I need him to carry with both hind legs in the school canter. So there I can get both hind legs to carry the chest, and then he can jump up and he can still keep his roundness quite well. So it's always tricky to get lifting of the chest and still keeping the horse very round. I very easily lose the roundness, it becoming too high and too much on the back hangs. So just to keep the roundness where I need it to be. So the forward canter helped me a little bit of creating that feeling a little bit in his back, so he can just be very round and relaxed and the hind legs jump forward. And then we come a little bit into the haunches in. And I use the school halt feeling, I use that shape and help the horse to create that shape into the canter, so that I get the roundness and the lifting and that he can stay very deep on the haunches. Try it one couple of more times. So then we can also see if we can use the school halt to improve the canter, and see if we can at least combine it. That we see that we can do a school halt and into the canter and back to the school halt, so that we can see if it helps each other. So if we start, for example, to see if we can place him, I'll just turn around a little bit here. Let's see if we can place him in with the school halt. So that I know at least that I can do a transition from it. I can do a transition down to the school halt and up to the canter again from the school halt. So I know that he's ready. So again, the school halt and the collection especially the schoolhalt. It's not a tool, it's not an exercise, it is a tool that we can use to improve all gates in. And that's also one of the reasons to why my feeling is always that I want motion into the schoolhalt. I want that he steps into it, because if I can get the more stepping forward feeling, it's way much easier to get transitions, and that I really feeling that when I have that forward thinking, it's much easier to do a transition from that schoolhalt.